Welcome back to Hot Rod Guy Garage. Today, we can get started back on the 66 Mustang, but your drag car build. So follow me along through that intro, and I'll be back. So guys, alright, so it has been about a month, I guess, at this point, since I made the last video on the 66 Mustang budget drag car. 65 Mustang, your engine is still at the machine shop, so still no update on that. Hopefully this week you'll have it bored and we know what kind of crank bearings and pistons we need to order for that engine. So a lot has been going on in the background. I brought that 68 Charger project in the shop. Been working on it in the background. I've been trying to get my 70 Torino back running. Been trying to get through some of these budget engine builds. So if you've seen any of that stuff, make sure you check those out. There's plenty of videos on them so far. And I brought another project back that's been gone for quite a while from China. And I know the Geo thing isn't everybody's thing, but I bought Project Blue Balls back, and it's got a blown up engine, so we'll eventually have to fix that too. But on the 66, I went in here and I built a trailer hitch. And as you can see, I put a new rear valance pan on it. I did install the rear valance pan. I didn't show the video on it, but this was the cheapest one I could find, and it was a very, very poor reproduction. And I had to I welded it to the car. So to say, there's no reason I should ever have to take it off. And it was too short by about a ½ inch on this side, and about 3/4 of an inch on this side. So other than that, I did get us a radiator and have it mounted up here. And like I said before, I just made some little saddles down here at the bottom. And I made a tension bolt up here at the top, which is just a threaded insert in this tab right here with a bolt. It goes through and pushes this little tab right here that has a piece of cork on the bottom of it to keep this radiator from flopping around. So that about covers everything that's happening in the background, guys. Other than I put the other fender flare on the driver's side. Our last video was putting the passenger side fender flare on it. I finished the driver's side up in the background, built that hitch, and done the radiator mounting in the background. In between working on the other jobs around the shop. So I didn't have time to video any of that stuff, so we're back. We're back to doing 66 Mustang budget dirt car videos. So I think at this point, we're pretty ready to start some budget body work. And when I say budget, guys, this is going to be budget. I'm not spending a whole lot of money to paint this car. I wasn't intending to paint it in the first place. But since we're signed up for the 6 Smokies, I do need to make this thing one consistent color and get it lettered up for the gasser class. And plus that, we got the No Name Nationals in September. So we got a bunch of work to do in a little bit of time. So what I mean by budget body work here, guys, is we're not going to spend a whole lot of time making this thing aero straight or going down, epoxy priming it, and coming back up like we're going to try to build something super nice. For race car purposes, we just need this car reasonably straight, one color, and to look decent. So, as you know, the 66, it's fairly rough. You know, it's fairly rough where we added things and replaced things and, you know, dents, and we got some rust in some places that we need to address and some things like that. So in this bodywork series, I'm going to show you how to do it, maybe not the right way, but the quick way, and should have decent long lasting results by doing it this way. It is absolutely not going to be the correct way to do it, but my goal is to spend less than $300 in this paint project on this car. So let me flip around and I'll show you what I got. We'll talk about some things we're going to need, and we'll go from there. So over here on the table, I've got a gallon of Z-Grip Evercoat. This is about the lower line decent stuff that you can get. And instead of using all metal in this, we're going to use what I like to call kitty hair, which is fiberglass reinforced filler. This is also waterproof, which means anywhere we put this, it's going to be exposed on the back side. This will not absorb water like your regular polyester filler will. And I got a pack of spreaders, some seam sealer, and we had some sandpapers and stuff I had left over from various projects. So by seeing what I got to fix this thing, you kind of have an idea of what's going on at this point. That stuff right there represents about 160 bucks. So like I said, I'm gonna spend less than $300. So we're halfway there with what we got. So we need to make this stuff last as long as possible. So what I need to do to get ready to start doing this bodywork, I need to go ahead and get this radiator out here because I don't need it full of filler dust. Don't worry about the 65 in the background. Dust ain't gonna hurt it. It's dusty. And, you know, I'm gonna have to push a car out of the way, 2 cars out of the way to move it. So it's not gonna hurt anything at this point. Dust washes off. So let's get started. Let me get this radiator jerked out of here. I'll put you guys on the big stand. We'll start getting started. So the radiator, I've got it out. I guess we're going to use our Bauer paint stripping tool here. Try to get as much of this off. I'm going to do one side at a time. So we'll do this door and quarter, and then do the trunk tail panel, and then do that quarter and door, and then do the roof. Anytime you start something like this, guys, always pick a starting point and work from there. So I want to start at kind of the roughest things, which are the sides, and then we'll do the roof last because it's probably the best panel on the car at this point. So let me put you guys on the big stand and we'll get started. And that little tool makes quick work of stripping paint off stuff, especially something like this. Because if you remember back, I told you they had blasted this car and sprayed some thin primer on it, and that's why we're getting this rust through. Which is also why we're having to take all this back off. Because, guys, I don't know if you can see all that rust right here. It was under that primer. Even in places where we didn't weld up holes and stuff in it previously, there was rust all over this door up under here. So now that the paint's off, I blew it off, wiped it down with a towel. We need to take something and treat this door. So what I'm going to use a little bit of Ospo in a spray bottle. I'm going to spray this door down, let it kill anything down here in these pits slightly, and then we'll move on from there. So guys, I don't want anybody to think that I'm using this garbage right here. I'm only using a spray bottle. It's got Ospo in it. So, you know, don't buy this stuff. I'm just going to spray this door down lightly and let it sit while we move on to some other things. And since I'm letting that door sit, I just took a towel and just kind of evenly spread that across the door. What that'll do, that'll help neutralize, that phosphoric acid will help neutralize any of this rust and etch any metal. So next thing we need to do, I see we got a pretty good sized dent in this door right here. We need to start trying to work it out a little bit. Sometimes that's the trick. I'm not worried about getting it all out because these doors are rough. I just want to try to round everything up the best I can. Either way, guys, it is super important that you do not put anything over rust, filler, paint, primer. It will cause you issues later. Even though, you know, everything you see poking through primer on this car looks like surface rust, even places where it's not through yet has surface rust. And the easiest way to treat that is with a phosphoric acid like Ospo, or you can get a concrete etch. This phosphoric acid-based and rust remover from your local hardware store. So at this point, I'm gonna let this door sit here for a little while, let it kind of do its thing on pits. I'm gonna try to get the paint stripped off this rocker panel and the rest of this quarter. And I'm gonna put you guys on big stand and then I'll be back. So I got everything sprayed with Ospo and it's been on there for a little while. And as you can see, all that rust has turned black, which means it has done its job. A smart eye will notice on this quarter panel that I did not remove all of the EPDM coating because as I was looking for any kind of patches of rust and there was absolutely none under that. But I sprayed it with some Ospo also, wiped it down. And all that does, guys, is kill any rust. It's going to seal the metal until we're ready to work it. And anything like at the bottom of this quarter seam down here from our old quarter panel where we spliced it into the new one back here, any rust that was on that is now going to be dead. And that becomes real important up here in this area, and as you can see, it's already turned black. So at this point, half the car, the paint is stripped off of it, except for the roof. So got the driver's quarter panel stripped. The Ospo is dry. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take some lacquer thinner, some clean towels. I'm going to wipe this metal down. Just take any kind of residue off of it. And then I'm going to hit it with a red Scotch-Brite pad real well. And we're going to mix up some filler, some kitty hair for these heavy fill areas or anywhere that has a weld. You always want to, there's always a chance for a pinhole, even though it may not look like it has any. So anywhere where we got weld seams, anywhere that I've welded up holes, anywhere that's going to have a seam, we're going to use kitty hair because it's waterproof. Any kind of fiberglass reinforced filler, guys, will not absorb water like a regular polyester filler, like I said earlier. So let me get this thing cleaned up, scuffed down, we'll start doing some heavy filling. Alright, now the car is prepped. We're going to mix up some of this kitty hair right here. Tiger hair is what everybody referred to for the long strand stuff. This is the short strand. So it's real important. If you're going to fill a large hole, you want the long strand. If you're going to fill small stuff like welds, you want the short strand stuff. And this is part number for what I'm going to use on this project. This stuff should be readily available to anybody at your local parts store. That's part of why I went with this. I want this job to be something anybody can replicate in their own backyard. So we'll get this thing opened up, and what you're going to see usually is something like this in there. It's going to be all kinds of unmixed. So you're going to have to take a paint stick and you're going to have to get in here and mix this stuff up really, really well. So it's going to take a little while to get all this incorporated, but as you can see, this stuff is basically fiberglass resin and chopped real fine fiberglass in a can. And once you get this stuff mixed, it's going to turn into a nice consistent mixture. It's going to have a consistent color to it. So you also want to take your hardener. It's going to come with. You want to mix it up in the tube too. Make sure it's good and mixed. And in this case, I'm not going to mix up a whole lot of this at a time because it is going to dry fast because it is hot out here today. So I'm just going to take a little bit and put it here on a little piece of cardboard. Right here. I'm just going to get it out. I'm just going to take our hardener and I'm just going to run the line across it. Right there. And generally, that gets you pretty close on the mixture. So let me get this mixed up and let's get put in the car. So, alright, at this point, guys, I have got everything on the driver's side that needed sealed, addressed. And before it dried all the way, I went in there with one of these old cheese graters, body filler file, whatever you want to call it. I knocked down the highs. And then I come in here with a flat disc on my angle grinder and dug out some places that were a little thick, places I didn't want thick, and knocked them down a little bit, because we're just using the kitty hair, the fiberglass reinforced filler, only to seal our weld joints, or anywhere it's welded, or anywhere that might have a pinhole or a small rust hole, so on and forth. That will keep water from getting through the filler and soaking up and getting and contaminating our fresh metal. So let me flip it around, I'll show you where we're at. So at this point, like I said, everything's that needed a heavy fill. We had a little rust pinhole right there. You can see it right there. It's filled in right there. You can see I ground it off, and it's just that. Where I weld the rocker panel trim clips up, I hit those places where I welded, where they put one more screw in dent pullers in this door. Where I weld them holes out, I put just a little bit in there. Same with the mirror holes. Where I welded up the trim holes for the 66 quarter trim, I went ahead and filled this quarter seam where I welded the flare on, just in that area of the weld joints. Where we seamed that quarter, just at the area of the weld joint, the roof, the quarter panel joint. Went there and filled it. Where I had to section this rear quarter. And then finally, down here where I welded our rear pan on, I went ahead and filled it. So, some of you may not like it. Like I said, this is going to be a budget. Something anybody can do at home. You want a decent car, it's going to last a little while, this is going to be how you're going to do it. This ain't going to be a perfect body shop job by any means. So at this point, we're ready to start putting some regular filler in it. Unfortunately, I'm not ready to at this current second. I've still got to pick up a few supplies in the background, some sandpaper and stuff. So I'm going to pick this video up tomorrow. We're going to come in here. We're going to figure out where all our dents are in these doors. We're going to mark them and address them one at a time. And instead of skim coating all the panels like I did on the 65 over here to make sure it's arrow straight, we were just going to go in here and address some of the major big dents. I'm not going to be worried about a little bit of a wave here or there or anything like that, because we're not building a show car. We're building a race car, and I just want it kind of slicked up enough that we can spray some paint on this thing, leather it up for these races. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. So hold on with me. So, alright guys, it's the next day and I grabbed the few supplies I needed, which had about another 60 bucks to our total. So, what I went and got some DA pads for DA sander because, you know, I was out, so I had to buy some. So, just got these at the Harbor Freight. For small projects, you're better off just to buy them like that. I probably bought about double what I needed, but I wanted to have some around the shop, and if I don't use them all, I'll deduct them from our total. And I'll update you guys towards the end. So, I'm fixing to flip it around. I'll show you how to find dents with your hand, okay? But first, somebody wants to say hi. You want to remind them about your shirts? Huh? You're the hardest kitty cat in the world to film sometimes. You know, everybody's going to be wondering where you're at. They ain't seen you in a couple videos. So guys, what you're going to do, you're going to look for your obvious first. Even in this, you can see the dents in this door. But if you can't, what I like to do, I'll just kind of, just temporarily, I'm not going to leave this blue paint on here, but I'm just going to run my hand along this door. And I want to try to feel and seek out anything that don't feel right to me. I'm just going to put one little bitty small dot. And this will get us to our initial point of where we're going to put filler. And you don't want to use a Sharpie because the Sharpie will bleed through. If you use a paint pen like this, you generally don't have to remove it. So you're just going to go along here and try to run it flat on your palm. Your hand is your best tool for filling where bad spots are. So use that to your advantage, and that will get you your initial fill spots. And once you have your initial fill spots, guys, that's where you're going to start. I am just going to apply filler to these areas instead of skim coating the whole door. Which we may have to end up skim coating this whole door because it's very rough. But we're going to start out trying to use the minimum amount of filler that we have to. So let me flip it around and we'll get you on the big stand. Alright, you want to open your filler, your regular filler, not the kitty hair stuff. You want to mix this stuff up. But if your filler is like this and will not run at least a little bit, or at least string off your stick, this stuff's been sitting on the shelf a while, guys, and it's really too thick to get a good result with. This would be good to fill a hole with, but not so much for trying to, you know, spread out smoothly as far as bodywork goes. So a lot of you will be happy. This morning I went by the Harbor Freight and I got me a mixing plate here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take some of this filler out. Don't get me wrong, this will still spread fine, but it's not going to kind of lay out real smooth when you spread it. So that's always a thing, and you can see it's very thick the way it's bowing that stick. And I don't really like my filler like that. So I'll get a little out like that. And a trick you can do, you can use a little fiberglass resin like this. And that fiberglass resin will not hurt the filler at all, but you can thin it out with it. So I will take just a little bit and I'll just run a little stream like that across it. And I'll go ahead and go in here and I'll need my hardener. They come with our filler. Real well. And about the best way you can do this stuff is, like I said before, just run you, from one side to the other, just run you a little bead. And at that point, you can start mixing it. If it's too thin, you can add a little more of your filler. If it's too thick, you can add a little bit more resin. All the resin will do is really make this kind of waterproof. Kind of like kitty hair. As you can see, it's still pretty thick. And it does slow the cure time down just a touch. So I'm just going to add a little bit more there. Know that once you add the hardener to this, you are on a timeline to get this in the car. Like I said, adding the resin slows it down a little bit. But I generally like my filler to be kind of this consistency right here. You can see it kind of just lay back over. The other thing the resin does is makes this harder to sand. But sometimes if it's too thick, this is what you got to do. So we're ready to get this in the car. And after you get your filler spread in the car, I'll take some black spray paint. It don't matter if it's a primer or a spray paint. You just need to make sure it's at least an enamel based product. And I'm just going to dust my entire panel. I'm not going to coat it. I'm just going to put like a guide coat on it. And what that'll do, that will help me see any highs or lows still on that door. So before your filler dries out all the way, and this is still, the filler's still a little tacky, but it's not wet enough that it rubs off on my hands. There comes a point when it's like that. And at that point, I'll take some 36 or 40 grit on a little block, and I'll just come in here. I'm not going to sand this, I'm just going to knock the highs off. And when I say knock the highs off, I mean any ridges or anything where you rub this in like this. I'm not taking off any workable material. I'm taking off the material that's just going to waste sandpaper when you switch to trying to work things. And if anybody says anything about this door being super flexible, remember that we gutted these doors in a previous episode and there's no door brace or anything inside of them. So they're pretty thin. I'm just going to go in here and knock any of these high spots off. Before this filler cures out all the way. It'll just make this job a lot easier. And this is going to gum your sandpaper up pretty bad because the filler's thin, but generally you can knock it off, or you can go in here and just rub your hand against it and they'll take most of it off. But I generally will use one piece of this sandpaper like this to knock down any of the highs and just keep it off to the side. So it's important to pay attention to your filler in its stages. Like I said, once it's tacky and you can't, disturb it with your finger, okay? Hit it with a coarse grit sandpaper, knock down any of those high spots where you spread it. You can spend a lot of time trying to spread it out perfectly smooth. It really don't matter, guys. But you have to go in there and knock those down with either that sandpaper or the filler file or cheese grater right here. These things are kind of handy, but they will cut a bunch of material really fast. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can really screw up and have to just keep putting more and more material in it because you dug grooves out in it. The sandpaper on the block thing works pretty well. And doing that black guide coat, as you can see the highs really, really well. So that'll do the same on the doors. It'll show us any lows or any dents I didn't feel or see. Just because we're doing this on a cheap thing don't mean we're going to do a bad job, guys. I want to show you that you can still do a good job while not doing it 100% perfect. So I'm going to let this filler sit here about another 5 minutes or so, and that'll get us to our next stage in its curing. And for our next stage, I want to be able not to stick my fingernail in it. I want to be able to not stick my fingernail in. And then we'll switch. We're still going to stay with a 36 or 40 grit, but we're going to switch to an air file. You can also do this with a long hand block or a long hand file if you're just trying to fix some small spots. As rough as this car is, air tools are going to greatly reduce the time of the job. And you're saving money by doing this yourself anyway. So if you want to sand it all by hand, do it all by hand. I personally prefer doing 90% of it by hand, because it ends up being a nicer job in the end, but it takes 100 times as long and it's a lot more labor intensive. right, and we're going to roughly work this down with 36. So what I notice here, we'll concentrate on this area right here. We have an area right here where we still see where I dusted the black on it. We still got black here and here. We got black here. And we got a little black here. The metal between here and here is pretty well covered. But I'm starting to see a little metal through in a couple spots. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come up here, and anywhere where we're starting to see metal come through, I'll take a body hammer like this and I'll just tap it. It's more predominant down here. Since I'm going to have to fill this a little more, I'm not going to mess with this one yet. But down here, we got a pretty good little high spot with two large lows between it. And I'm just going to come in here. And this will be hard to do with this door being thin as it is. And sometimes you might have to just back it up anyway with something. I'm just going to come in here with a body hammer and make a slight low. We got another spot up here by the mirror. You can see it up here on top of the screen right here. I got two little spots right here. I'm just going to go in here. Tap them down. And now that I'm ready for my second coat of filler, it should be able to address about 90% of this that we see. The black guide coat lets us see if we have any lows. We got a little spot up here at the front of the door. We got this one right here, and of course the ones in our filler. So instead of overworking this, a lot of people have a tendency to overwork it. When you start seeing metal, guys, stop. If it's like this, you got two big lows next to it, and one high metal piece, tap it down. Like here. We have filler, but we're already starting to see metal through. We don't see no filler on either side. Tap it down. That'll save you a lot of time and a lot of filler. So you're going to get your second amount of filler put in there. And what I've done, guys, I went a little further around this stuff, a little further out. And as you see, I went ahead and skimmed the bottom of the door. And I went ahead and re-guide coated it. So I'm going to repeat the same process, except I'm just going to knock the very top of it off with the 40 grit and the 36 this time. I'm not going to work it all the way down until we start seeing metal again with that. I'm going to knock the top off of it with it. I'm going to switch our paper to an 80 grit to kind of fine work this down. And right before we get to a level of decentness, I'm going to switch to some 120 grit. So pretty much, guys, this is what you're going to do. Your first fill, you're just going to go in there and put some in, guide coat this door, see where your bad spots really, really are. Put more filler in, you're going to re-guide coat it, you're just going to repeat this process. I've got a lot of ground to cover here. So while this is kind of tacking up, I'm going to mix up some filler and put it some other places. That way, kind of in the background, I can kind of address things as we go. And I know a few of you be like, well, why didn't you epoxy primer the car when it was bare metal? You can, guys. It kind of takes some of the budget out of it. It's always a good idea to seal the metal, but filler is made to be put over bare metal also. It takes a couple extra steps out of it, and for a budget paint job, you don't really need it. So just keep your metal dry. If you're working somewhere outside that's damp or could possibly get damp, do one panel at a time when you strip this thing down to metal. Do not leave it bare metal. The OSPO or phosphoric acid etch will seal that off for a day or two, but it is not a long-term leave it bare metal solution. So you want to work a panel at a time unless you get somewhere inside that's dry. So let me get back to it, and I'll be back when it comes time to work this down. From that point, guys, you just keep working. I sprayed a little primer up here and hit it with a block a little bit. You're going to see witness marks of the filler. The top half of this door is pretty decent. I went in here on the middle section and added a couple more skims in a couple of places to kind of fill a couple little small pinholes up. And I come down here and I re-skimmed the bottom of this door. So you're just going to have to keep adding a little bit here and there, or tapping a little bit of metal down here or there until you get the result that you want. And I will say, guys, we're not looking for necessarily perfection at this stage. You want it straight. You want to be able to run your hand across it and not feel any bumpy stuff. But just work this stuff down. Make sure you don't have any big pinholes. And when you move on to the real primer stage, like this is just some of this TranStar primer. You can get this stuff. It's pretty inexpensive. It does add to the cost. You don't want to use something like a Rust-Oleum primer or anything over this. You want to use an automotive grade primer, even if it's an aerosol can. I'm just going to coat this stuff until I get done with the Bodywork with the TranStar primer. Then I'll come back in here and I'll kind of hit it with a flat block, and then later on we'll come back with some high build primer. And that's going to be real important in doing this and on kind of a budget. A high build primer will let you block out even more of these little small errors that you may have missed. So I'm going to get back to work, guys, sanding on this door. And when I get the door finished up, I'll be back. Well, I got the door and the rocker panel down there sprayed with some of the TranStar primer. And these the white TranStar is kind of a guide coat. But at least we got a body line now that we can actually see, and there's not big giant caved in spots like the other side. So need to start working on this quarter. I'm going to pull this wheel and tire off here because I'm going to be working close to this edge. And I've already got some smuts on these tires, and they're not very old, so I don't want to get them covered in, you know, fillery things. That, and it's not really good on a race tire to be exposed to different kind of chemicals like that. They do lose their sticky stuff, so to say, when they sit any amount of time in outgas. So let me get started on this quarter, and I'll be back when there's a trick or a tip. Well, here's probably one of those teachable moments. Before everybody thinks there's going to be a buttload of filler in this flare, there's really not, guys. You can see the kitty hair right here. But I do have a problem. Some of my welds need to be ground down just a little bit further right here. And what I'm going to use is my air die grinder with my carbide bits right here. I'm just going to go in here and touch these spot welds just on the area of them. I've got 3 or 4 right here, and then I got a couple over here on the other side that you can't currently see. But that is how you address that. That is not a high spot in the metal. That is actually our weld where I weld this flare onto the existing quarter panel. So now I got the side of the quarter worked, and you can kind of see our quarter panel flare how I intended it to be. It's not really super over exaggerated over the factory, but just enough to make it a little different. So at this point, I need to fit my quarter extension so I can check this dimension right here. And as you can see, this good marked quarter panel strikes again. You can see we got a gap that runs open. And as you can see, I put a little tape right here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some of that kitty hair, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to fill this till it's level right here with this quarter extension. Normally I would split this, try to hammer it up, weld a piece of rod in it, but in this case we're just going to put a little kitty hair in there just to make sure we got a decent, you know, transition here. It's not so much about the gap here, but it is about the gap since we're going to have to deal with transition. I'll tell you guys, I wish, to be honest, that I never cut the other quarter out of it. I wish I just welded it in there and went forward, because the portion of the good mark quarter that we ended up using was actually still good on the old 66 quarter. So, you know, we just used it to use it, and here we are. So, like I said, I want to deal with this. I'm going to put you guys on a big stand. We're going to deal with the roof to quarter transition now, and the quarter to rear window filler panel transition. So let's get started. So slightly frowned upon to do it this way. The right way would have been weld a piece of rod in there and done it that way, but budget. So let's see if this quarter extension will actually come off. We're roughed up pretty much the level in here. So we'll buzz these bolts out before this hardens all the way. It's still somewhat soft. And this being a race car, the likelihood of actually hitting something is pretty high, so if we done our job right, we should have basically a perfect mold by using the tape as far as the feel for a quarter extension. So as you've seen, this removed cleanly. Now come out here with some 36 grit and just kind of roughly clean this up through here. And anybody curious why I put some up through there, it's because of the trunk, the quarter panel gap tube was all kind of screwed up. Won't last forever, but will last long enough for a race car. So at this point, I'm ready to put some regular filler on this. Our quarter to roof transition area right there, all the way down here to where our quarter extension bolts on. Well, it's the next day, and I decided to let the kitty hair cure overnight. Just to make sure it was good and hard before I put any filler on top of this quarter. That's an important thing when you're stacking chemicals on top of each other. You want to make sure everything's kind of cured out before you put something else over top of it, so to say. If you don't, you can have problems that way. Especially with paints. Flash times on paint is very, very important. Body filler, not so much, because it'll still cure, because it chemically cures. It doesn't cure by the air or anything. But it's always better to be safe than to be sorry later. So let's get some filler on top of this quarter. Let's get this side finished up and we can move on further. So, alright, got that mostly worked down by hand. I went back in here with some super reduced filler with some fiberglass resin and filled a couple of little pinholes. That's one thing I didn't mention in this video, is anytime you use a lower line filler, you're going to have more of a chance for pinholes, which means in the end, more work because it's cheaper. So I went in here, I had a weld sticking up right here. I went in there and ground that down, just like I did over here on the flares with my die grinder, and I put a little extra in there. Everything else here is just thin, just translucent, like smear coat. You can see through it. Just enough for that to go down those little pinholes. And that's also important that you use a high build primer when you use a cheap filler too. It will help. Just in case you miss any, you know, it happens. It happens to everybody, regardless of what they want to tell you or not. So we're pretty decent here. This, once this cures out a little bit, I'm going there with some 150 grit DA pads folded over like this. And I'm just gonna go in here and hand sand this stuff, except for that little area where I had to grind it out for the weld. I'll use a little block in that area. But let me get this stuff dried out, and I'll be back, guys, and it'll be time to move on to some other things. So, alright, the compressor's running. I don't know if you guys can hear or not. I sprayed some of our black primer on top of this quarter and on the B pillar there. So at this point, we need to get the paint stripped off the trunk and the rear window filler panel right there. So let's get to that. Get the paint stripped off the trunk and filler panel. And I got it sprayed down with some of our Ospo. As you can see, it's already started to etch the metal because we had stuff like this under the primer. Most of it come off with the wheel, and some of it didn't. The only rust hole I found was this little pinhole right here. And I went ahead and took a small flathead screwdriver, went in there and just kind of jabbed it out so we can put a little kitty hair in it. The trunk lid is fairly straight. We got a little pooch up right here. Got a little dent down right here. And of course, where I welded our trunk latch piece to the bottom of the trunk, we'll need a little bit of body work right in this area. I think trunk will go fairly quick. Along with this rear filler panel, it has a dent right here. The rest of it is pretty decently straight. I know a lot of you probably wondering, and I probably covered it earlier in this video, why do you just strip 1 or 2 panels at a time? Because it's been rainy and humid here, and I don't want to give rust any chance to set back into this stuff. So the easiest way I can do that is get in here, do what I need to do, get it covered back up 1 panel at a time. So once this Ospo finishes doing this job, we'll come in here like I did before, hit it with Scotch-Brite some thinner, and we'll start our body work. Alright guys, so now we need to figure out exactly where all our rough places are for our initial body filler fill. I've done went in there and put some kitty hair in our couple little spots. So I got a paint pen here, and I've got a towel. You can use a towel instead of your hand, and it will actually enhance the feel of any bad spots. And it just kind of lets you feel any kind of disturbances in this panel. So I've got something right here I didn't see. We got something right here. We got something here. And of course we got something in this area, which I knew. But this kind of actually enhances the feel of what you're doing. So I know we got something there. We got something there. We got something there. And we got something here. So the towel trick is just something I figured I'd share with you guys. It can't be like a cloth towel. It needs to be something like a paper towel or something like one of these paper shop rags. But it does enhance the feel a little bit so you can feel what's going on. Alright, so I got our first coat of filler down. Our initial fill just in the places that were blatantly obvious. I went ahead and dusted it with a little of the black primer. I'm going to take the air file, I'm going to work this down, and we should be able to see if we have any other places that we can't see, or if we're going to have to add any more filler in spots. So let's get to that. Alright, so our initial work down is done. And as you can see, we got a few little dark spots. Probably held from over time. These actually, you cannot feel them, but you can see them. It's going to be up to you at that point if you want to go in here and fill these spots and try to work them down. Like I said, you can't fill them, none whatsoever. High build primer will more than likely take care of that. The only place we're going to have to add any more filler is right here above our trunk lock. In this area, this trunk was fairly rough right here. And I can still feel a pretty significant divot right in this area that's actually shaped just like that. Other places we got that are a little dark, like this right here, when you run your hand across it, guys, it feels good and smooth. So we're not going to worry about that. So everything else worked down decent. That's just a couple little pinholes in there. It's holding a little bit of the black primer. Went ahead and hit that place up there, that dent up there. So I'm going to mix up some more filler. I'll get that put in there, and then I'll be back. Alright, so I got some more filler put in that, and I got our place work down here pretty decent. So at this point, I'm going to spray some of our TranStar primer on the trunk lid itself. We'll move on from there. Yeah, I got the trunk sprayed and a little of the TranStar primer. Keep in mind, it will soak into your filler, so it will show witness marks everywhere and make it look horrible. That's why I go ahead and guide coat this, because when I scuff this down before we put any real primer on it, it will give me an idea if there's any large spots that I may have possibly missed with my, my eye. Or otherwise, like a second set of eyes. That way, before we spring high build on this thing, I will have a chance to go in there and fix anything major, if there is. Because everybody misses something sometimes. That said, guys, that's probably where I'm going to cut this video off. It's probably starting to drag out a little bit at this point. So our next video, we're going to start on the other side and get it wrapped up and move on to the roof. So if you haven't yet, make sure you like this video, share them with your friends. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. It does help the channel grow, and it's absolutely free. So until next video, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next one.